So let's ask this question again. Is Iowa State really a Big 12 contender this year? This is the deepest conference in the country. There is no other conference in which you have more teams that could reasonably be picked to win the conference championship. That's why the Big 12 is going to be so much fun. But here's the kicker. Here's where I'm not ruling out Iowa State. I'm not on the Josh Pate Iowa State hype train here. I asked Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, what he thinks of Iowa State. He said 8-win team, not going to contend for it, not going to do it. Here's why I can't rule him out, though. Matt Campbell might not have all the pressure in the world, all the urgency in the world on him to win at a high level this year, to contend for a Big 12 championship, maybe even push for a playoff spot. You never know. By the way, just a quick note, Iowa State has got the same win total as Arizona and has better odds to win the Big 12 title with a tougher schedule than Arizona's. I'm just throwing it out there. I was recently criticized for my takes on Arizona, and everyone else is catching up. But you know what? That's okay. I forgive you, Arizona fans. I still love you deep in my heart. Anyway, back to Iowa State. When you're in the deepest quarterback conference, I have a hard time picking you to do well if I don't like your quarterback situation. I mean, Baylor, for instance, we'll see. We'll see what DeQuan Finn brings to the table. But when you're going through a schedule where you're facing above average quarterback play every single week, it gets hard. It gets hard. It gets really, really hard. But Iowa State doesn't have that problem. The best quarterback conference in all of college football last year was the Pac-12. Who won it? Oh, that's right. Michael Penix. He was, the number 8 overall pick by the Atlanta Falcons. Think of that selection, whatever you would like. But Iowa State doesn't have a quarterback deficiency. In fact, when I talk about the Big 12 as being a premier quarterback conference, the premier quarterback conference, Rocco Becht is one of the guys you have to mention in there. Big 12 Freshman of the Year, set all sorts of Iowa State passing records as a freshman a season ago. He was really impressive. He's back to start. What's my rule on this show? When you bring back things like head coaches and offensive coordinators and quarterbacks or some combination thereof, I like that team. Does that mean I like Iowa State to contend? We're going to know early in the year. They go at Iowa. They go at Iowa week 2. Great rivalry in college football. Great rivalry. That's not going to be an easy football game. Never is. Iowa's a good team. Iowa was a 10-win team last year. Cade McNamara, hopefully, is going to be able to stay healthy for them at quarterback. And Kirk Ferentz, well, he's still there. He and Kyle Whittingham, they're just still there. That's where they're at. Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, they're still there. It would almost feel, those two guys, similar to Gary Patterson being there. Gary Patterson isn't even at TCU anymore, hasn't been for several seasons. But those two guys are still there. That's just the way the football works. So, Iowa State, we're going to learn about them in that game. Because if you can go on the road and win that one, maybe they'll be able to make it through their road schedule. But if they go and get blasted somehow, I'm not predicting that, I'm just saying hypothetically, Iowa State fans, if they go to Iowa and they get run out of town or they don't look very good, they're going to struggle the rest of the year on the road because their road schedule is brutal. I think Iowa State, which is number 2 in the country, by the way, second only to Virginia Tech by, I think percentage, this would be a player or 2, maybe, not even that. They have an 85% returning production rank. I'm just pausing to let you think about that. 85% of their key production from a year ago is back. Their quarterback is back. Their head coach is back. The problem is their schedule is brutal. This is where I struggle with Iowa State getting themselves to the Big 12 championship game. Listen to this schedule. Now, Iowa, of course, is a non-conference game, so that's not factoring into their ability to contend for a Big 12 championship. They have to play all of these games in a single season. They play at Iowa week 2. As I said, we will learn a lot. They play at West Virginia. Don't for a moment think that that's going to be easy. Morgantown wasn't a very easy place for a lot of teams to go last year. That's a 9-win team that's returning their head coach in quarterback with Neil Brown and Garrett Green. Then they have UCF at home, who are not a group of 5 team anymore. That's a good-looking Big 12 team who have some decently high hopes for this season. They have that game at home. They have Texas Tech at home. It would not shock me if Iowa State loses either of those games. Heck, depending on how teams are playing, I could be picking them to lose both of those games because those are a couple of quality teams with, wait for it, capable quarterbacks. Baron Morton at Texas Tech, KJ Jefferson over at UCF. So those are a couple of tough home games. Let's get back to the road games because that's the point I was originally making. Kansas on the road. Jalen Daniels on the road. This is why quarterback play is so important. Kansas on the road. 3 of their final 4 games are the following. At Kansas, then they play Cincinnati. Then they go at Utah. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. And then they host Kansas State. And let me put my thinking cap on real quick. Oh, yeah, that's right. Kansas State, they have the second best odds to win the Big 12 this year. That schedule is brutal. I think if you had a more favorable schedule, Iowa State, who were 7-6 last year, lost their bowl game to Memphis. And I've talked about Memphis on the show before as one of the group of 5 teams that can make their way into the college football playoff. FanDuel win totals reflect that because it's 8.5 for the Tigers. That's a pretty impressive win to beat Matt Campbell and company. But anyway, I digress again, as sometimes I do. Iowa State's schedule here is absolutely brutal. Like, you could have a good season. Iowa State could do well. They could be a good team. They could play well. They could play good football. Rocco Becht could be even better than he was a season ago. And Iowa State could end up 8-4. Now, that'd be over their preseason win total, but you're not getting to the Big 12 championship game. You could lose at Iowa. You could lose a handful of those Big 12 games. You could be competitive. This could be a Nebraska situation. That's how I feel with Iowa State. This could be a Nebraska situation where it's not actually a bad team. The record just might look a lot worse than it is. They might have a lot of close losses in here. Because do I like Iowa State's roster? It's hard to not with an experienced, solid head coach who, by the way, like Dave Doran at NC State, has never won 10 games as the head coach of the current program, but is still seen as a good head coach as he should be. Is this a pop year? Can Iowa State reach that sort of level? We are going to find out. And they are going trial by fire here with Rocco Becht. I guess he sort of had that a year ago starting as a freshman, but this is a guy that people have really high hopes for. And if he's going to live up to him, we're going to see it. We're going to see it early. But then they come down the stretch. You could have a great first half of the year. Think about this. If you're Iowa State, their schedule, the first 6 games go like this. North Dakota, that's a win. At Iowa, hard game. Probably going to be an underdog. Arkansas State, that'll be a win. Houston on the road, should be a win. Baylor at home, should be a win. At West Virginia. That's the first half of their schedule. You could do really well in that stretch. You could go 5-1. They could be like Utah last year in the Pac-12. Utah started 5-1. They were ranked inside the top 15. And then the back half of their schedule came around. USC did the same thing. USC started 6-0, and then they played the second half of their schedule. It's just brutal. It's a brutal slate. UCF, Texas Tech, Kansas, Cincinnati, Utah, Kansas State. Where's the break in there? Cincinnati, I guess, is the break. You have that game at home. You better win that one, or things have really gone off the rails. I don't know if Matt Campbell is coaching with an outrageous amount of pressure here, because I think he's a good coach, and I think the people at Iowa State know and understand that. I just think that this schedule, it's not Florida's schedule, but gosh almighty, they're not getting any breaks there from Brett Yormark and company. So that's my question with Iowa State. They could very well have the team where the returning coach, quarterback, and roster from a solid unit a year ago, on paper, that looks like progression that leads to them contending for the Big 12 this year. That schedule, though, I don't know. I mean, between at West Virginia, at Kansas, and at Utah, that feels like you certainly have at least one loss, but it feels like at least 2, and 3 is not out of the question, just because you got some tough teams in the league. The Big 12 title race, it's going to be so much fun. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, which makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, not up. down, which is better for you, the consumer. They've got killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. That's how Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want. The all-in pricing, that's a great feature they've got. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, which bugs me personally, and that's why I love Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. All one word for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.